Okay, next let's hear from Scott to talk more about the ballot initiative campaign on marijuana.
Joe, thanks. That was good. So the initiative on the ballot in November of this year proposes to tax and regulate marijuana like alcohol, to take it out of the black market and put it into a regulated market. This is also only for adults 21 years and older. This effort has been proposed in different forms in Nevada going back to 2002, I believe, was the first time it was on the ballot, then known as, I think, Question 9. I moved to Nevada in 2004 to work on an effort to try to get it on the ballot that year. As Jay Leno joked in The Tonight Show, the Stoners lost the signatures. In fact, we didn't qualify it that year. There was some hijinks that occurred, and some signatures that weren't there before the turn-in showed up miraculously a week later in a locked office at the campaign. So I then turned my direction towards other advocacy efforts, but they tried one more time in 2006, did get it on the ballot, it didn't pass. So here we are 10 years later. In 2014, an effort to gather signatures for the 2016 ballot began. Some of the folks that were instrumental in that effort are here in the audience. So Greg Esposito, we spoke earlier about that effort. There was basically the signature gathering effort. Over 200,000 signatures collected. Went to the state legislature in 2015. The legislature did not act on this effort, and so you all will have an opportunity to vote on it in November. Couple things that I want to just focus on why this is important, whether or not you support, well, I wouldn't say support, whether or not you choose to use marijuana or not. It's sort of the same question of alcohol. We have a legal, regulated alcohol system in this state, in this country. You don't have to partake, but we understand why we ended prohibition so many decades ago, and why we should also end prohibition nationally. In our state, the idea is that this is going to help law enforcement change their priorities as opposed to arresting victimless, for victimless crimes involving marijuana possession and the selling of marijuana, be able to focus their efforts in other areas. It's also, and we can point to other states like Colorado, where there's been a lot of data on this. We've seen that the black market in Colorado is almost non-existent. At least the black market that was perpetrated by the cartels, and so ultimately this does eliminate that aspect of the market when you have a regulated market. One of the big things we're also seeing in Colorado, and will be the same here in Nevada, is increased resources for schools. There's a 15% excise tax on the wholesale component of the market, which would all go towards K through 12 education. And I'll talk a little bit more about Colorado in a moment, because there's some numbers I want to share with you. In terms of creating jobs and the additional tax revenue at the local level, we don't have our policy papers put together yet to give you an idea of what we think those numbers are going to look like, but we can look at what our current medical marijuana industry is doing and see that there are going to be a lot of jobs created, and not just in the cultivations, production, dispensaries, and labs, but also in the ancillary businesses. There's a lot of people that have been doing construction in this valley, in these smaller construction projects that didn't exist prior to the medical marijuana becoming a regulated industry here. And then, of course, we just want to ensure the right restrictions are in place. This isn't going to weaken or strengthen our current marijuana DUI laws, though we do have some of the strictest in the country. It's also not going to force employers to require that their employees not have to take drug tests. These will be questions we'll have to address as we move forward, assuming we do pass adult usage, but it's not something that this initiative addresses. In a couple states where this exists, Washington and Colorado. Colorado is probably the one that's gotten the most attention. There are TV shows about the industry. There have been numerous news reports. The funding that they've raised in Colorado from taxation on this is around $100 million. This is $1 billion industry in the state of Colorado. And if you look at some of the figures related to and this is something we'll talk about on the panel, so I don't want to get too deep of a dive, but the positive on this absolutely outweighs the negative in what we're seeing in Colorado. But we'll talk about some of the perceptions of the negative impacts later. And in a state like Washington, it's a newer market, but yet they're still showing that this is worthwhile in terms of revenue. So what's unique about Nevada passing this year versus not doing it, the state of California, state of Arizona, Maine, and I think there's a couple other states that are also going to have this on the ballot. Different campaigns, different efforts.